Before we consider a resolution, I thought it might be appropriate just to go to each of the commissioners if anyone has something comment they'd like to make based on what they've heard, or any further questions for Mr. Fane or really for anyone else. So Sandra, can we start with you? Just go around the table. If you want to pass, you can pass, but if not, here's your opportunity.
So thanks to the public and to Mr. Fane and his team for coming back. Obviously, incredibly difficult decision. I think that we have heard the community. Just really briefly, what I'm thinking about is the role of the commission is just to really economic development. I don't think every single parcel will create STEM jobs, or nor should we look for that. So I think having a mixed use is really what the commission ultimately can achieve. The developer has adjusted this proposal significantly. It's not perfect by any stretch yet. But I've looked very carefully at the numbers and the county study as well. But I guess ultimately I think that I would be for moving this forward and at least giving them an opportunity to just get to the next stage, look at very carefully reducing the impact on the park. We still have parkland. It's not that this is going to be eliminated. And so I think that in the end, there will be issues to be sorted through, and I'm going to take Mr. Fane on his board as well on his comment regarding the economic impact, and how he's not really requesting, certainly today, any more money that was available already through the tax credit. So I'm going to be looking at that again when he provides his piece in front of us. So thank you.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what Senator said. So on the one hand, as someone who had to relocate folks to Providence, and they've had to look for places to live, and maybe they haven't been ready to buy those places. There's not a lot of desirable places for them to rent, for people who might work in the knowledge district. So, that's a very anecdotal piece of data, but I do think that there's a market for product. And I think in general, as someone who's really into historic preservation and the built environment, will sort of generally think I would be opposed, but I find myself sort of cautiously in support. I kind of like the idea that, our building estate would be 90 years old if this went forward. I think that if you look at, sort of, it actually was the case that each of these tall buildings did face a lot of opposition when they first went up. And then, with regard to the park, I think that there's concern about, there's legitimate concern about how to impact the park. But I think one thing I was trying to think about is if you look at 121 South Main Street, which is the new old Bank building that's now Grounds for Public Health, and the way that articulates with Memorial Park, and then you go North Main Street to that park, there's nothing articulated on, there's just no one there. And Commission 1.0, we were already talking about an active park, this actually might help solve that. I also like the idea of adding the critical mass of the area. With all that said, it is true that from a sort of direct economic development perspective, the gains here will be modest as a function of the sort of total size of the project and sort of design sort of imperative because it would change the skyline. And I think that I feel somewhat, my concerns there are somewhat allayed by the most recent presentation and by the quality of the firm being brought to bear there. But I think that would remain a critical aspect further into the process, given the relevant laws of development reimagining. But I'm sort of cautiously supporting.
I did not vote to approve the level 1 application for a lot of reasons. And I feel that with this presentation, coming back, reviewing all of the information from Patty, thank you very much, and looking at the documents, especially Exhibit B, that is attached to the resolution, I see that there are still areas that were required for level 1 that have not been met. And for me to feel comfortable to approve level 2, when there are requirements that still have yet to be met in level 1, I don't feel comfortable with that. I feel that we adopted an ordinance as a commission, and I feel that it's fairly flexible when it comes to height, etc. I feel like this is way outside of that. It's just my personal opinion. So I just think that with those areas, with the market viability being in question, the financial feasibility being in question, I understand all of Mr. Fane's presentation. I appreciate that you worked so hard with the staff to modify it, but in regards to how I feel moving forward with this project, the risk, the viability, feasibility, I still don't feel any different about this application than I did from the very first one. In my mind, based on the information I saw in the first application versus this one, there is not much difference other than the physical structure from it being 3 to 1. So I stand with my original position to not support this application going forward.
Thank you. I do want to offer comments by way of context, background, and a little bit about process moving forward. So as you heard tonight from Ms. Adele's presentation and others, we have a tremendous amount of interest in Providence right now, which is really exciting. We have many, many projects in our pipeline. Many of those projects are going to break ground this year. I've heard hotels mentioned. We have 8 hotels that are moving forward. So just to give everyone that context, there's a tremendous amount of interest in our city. We're really, really excited about that. We're very encouraged about that. And we certainly are very excited and welcome Mr. Fane in Providence. As he said, and as we all know, this is a great site. It's a beautiful site. It's a beautiful location. It's the heart of this district, and it's really the heart of the kind of expanding downtown. As we think of all of this infill development, really moving the center of gravity of downtown, this site is really the heart of that location. I wanted to talk a little bit about the strong tradition that we have in Providence of proactive city planning. As we all talked tonight quite a bit about, we have an authentic historic character with a strong quality of place in Providence. We have that authentic quality of place that many cities around this country are trying to create, and they are actually looking to Providence in terms of our intimate scale, our character, our architecture, of how they should go about building authentic places that have lasting value. And the good news is that we have that in Providence. So we know that that quality of place is one of Providence's most strategic assets. And so that's why we take planning and urban design really seriously. We want to protect that strategic asset because we know that that is economic development. So that's sort of the angle that we're approaching this. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about our process, how our planning process works. We talked a lot about the regulations that are in place and the process that happens to make those regulations. So I think you all know that we engage stakeholders in a very robust and open process to develop both our comprehensive plan and our zoning districts and the regulation and design regulations for those districts. We have lots of robust discussions and debates about character, height, mass, and scale, how buildings relate to the public realm. And so out of those conversations and debates, that's how the regulations are built. And as we talked about tonight, the regulations for this site are D1 with a height zone of 100 feet. We do also have built-in incentives and flexibility into those regulations. So there is some flexibility to get up to 160 feet through a series of programs that we have. So in thinking about sort of these
spaces, as we think of planners as great urban spaces, we think about how these spaces kind of fit together. But we know it's really, as we've talked about tonight, the places are about how people use those spaces. So these are the things that we're particularly interested in reviewing for any project that comes before us. How does the height, scale, and massing and project fit into its context? We've talked a lot about that tonight. How does the project enhance and add value to the street life around it? Does it add value to the public realm? Does the project enhance the city's character, add value to the quality of the urban design, and how does it activate life around the project? So specific to this project, some things that we really are going to be evaluating very closely that we didn't see tonight are the elevations from the street edges. And one thing that makes this site really exciting and wonderful, but also complicated at the same time, is the number of street edges that you have to address. So you have the Dorrance Street edge, and basically 3 park edges that are all going to be important, that are all going to be active edges that people are going to really see. There's no part of this building that's tucked away in a corner. All these edges are going to be important. So without any information about those elevations and how the building interacts with the street edge, interacts with the park in those 3 locations, it's pretty difficult to comment on sort of how well does this project perform in those questions that we just talked about. So we are encouraged by the progress that has been made to reduce the footprint for all of the reasons that we've talked about here tonight, but I just feel that there's really not enough detail to evaluate any of the other concerns that we have about the project. And so moving forward, I just wanted to note that as we've talked about tonight, the project does require a zoning change from the Providence City Council. And that process kind of begins with submitting that petition. That petition then gets sent to the City Planning Commission. So there will be an internal review from the City Planning Department and a public meeting at the City Planning Commission. The City Plan Commission's opinion will be advisory to the Ordinance Committee of the City Council, and then ultimately the Ordinance Committee would vote to move the project to the full council for their review or not. And so I just wanted to note that, which is critically important to me as the planning director and to the city as a whole, that there are multiple opportunities along this path for public engagement. And as someone said, there's a lot of people who are not in the room tonight, and there's going to be several opportunities, perhaps half a dozen public meetings, public hearings, where people can come to learn more about the project. I want to stress that at each one of those meetings, there's going to need to be an additional amount of information that's presented. What's presented tonight won't be sufficient to grant a very significant change to the city zoning ordinance or to get a positive review by the City Planning Commission. So at each one of those meetings, I encourage us all to dig deeper into the project details at that time. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. Becky?
Well, first of all, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, everybody. I think this has been an incredibly interesting process and an interesting evening, and I'm learning a lot, but I'm also recognizing that I don't know a lot about this particular project, but I want to know more about it. I just am still interested. And I sort of feel even, Melissa, I totally respect your perspective that you're saying no, but in fact, I kind of value the process that we've been going through, and I respect the process that I think the developer has made changes. We're seeing a next round. I am sure there'll be more changes if we get to the next round. I think it's got to go through the city process. It's got to go through community, additional community input. The developer is at huge risk here because I don't think or believe that the city or state provides any more than a minimum amount of money for this project. So the developer is really the one at risk. And the developer is going to have to figure out how to make this work and get the financing. And I think as a consequence, the project will adapt and change and become probably more acceptable to this community as it goes on. So I'm not done. I'm not done with it yet, and I want to know more, and I want to see it get to another phase where it constantly iterates and gets improved, and I'm hoping it will, because I think there's a lot of pluses but there are a lot of risks. And I hope most of the risks fall onto the, excuse me, Fane, but I hope you're also assuming most of the risks, because I wouldn't want this to be a risk for Providence and Rhode Island. I want it to be an addition, an additive thing in the long run, and I hope we could get there. That's all.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Terrific meeting and enormously helpful. I think it's very important that this project advance and that we award a level 2 approval with appropriate caveats and conditions this evening. I want to explain my reasoning. There's been a lot of discussion of the Commission's charge from testifiers today, all of which is welcome. I believe that as we think about the role of residential development in the 195 corridor, it's important that we acknowledge that what businesses are seeking today is a 24/7 environment, a bustling district that has a neighborhood feel where you can find the amenities and you can find the liveliness that you wish to see in a vibrant, healthy community. That's what injecting more residential into an innovation district can accomplish. It's a false dichotomy to say that a commission charged with jobs ought not pursue the development of residential. I respect the position that we ought to be very focused on job production, very, very much so, but I think the notion that residential development is at odds with that is mistaken. That doesn't mean that any project is the right project. We do need to continue to scrutinize this one, but I just want to put that out there. The HRNA report, which was prepared for us, the consultancy HRNA looked at the 195 district and made recommendations to us. They very definitively suggested that we promote residential development in this district as we pursue our multiple goals, inclusive of commercial development. So it's the fulfillment of that. By the way, there's been some dialogue around construction jobs and the role in our economy. Construction jobs are enormously important. We, in the course of the Great Recession and its aftermath, saw too great a dip in construction work. And it's very important that men and women in the construction trades be brought back to work, and we're very pleased that Rhode Island was just named the fastest growing in terms of rate of construction job growth in the country. But there's more work to be done, and it's a very positive attribute of this project that it would, if successful, upon receiving the additional scrutiny that we must give it, if it is to proceed, that it would result in construction jobs. That's very advantageous. I want to speak to the developer, Mr. Fane, and his team. I admire enormously the way in which the Fane Organization has been responsive to the feedback of this commission and other stakeholders to date. It's terrific. The progress that you've made in the design, John, thank you for, under Mr. Fane's guidance, accomplishing these moves. The evolved design is far superior to what we first saw, and indeed other iterations that emerged along the way. The way in which this design hugs Dorrance and Dyer Streets, the way in which it aspires to and has the potential to achieve vitality at the street level through the injection of retail, the fact that it leaves substantial open space available for the purpose of development of parkland. Those are very positive attributes. There is indeed, as Ms. Nickerson points out, there's indeed a great deal of additional work that's required, and we must all be up for that. This is not the end point. It is in many ways the true beginning point. There is work to be done regarding satisfying the requirements of the city and enabling city review, but I think that our role tonight is to advance this project so that process may occur. On the financing point, I also do want to note that in early on conversations and all through the process, Mr. Fane has been very forthcoming in expressing that he's prepared to make this project happen, to finance it or ensure its financing. I do think that beyond what's been possible in the constraints of tonight's hearing and previous meetings, we need to understand that more fully. We need to know that we are investing in a project, if indeed we are, through the Rebuild Rhode Island tax credit, through a sales tax exemption, through the tax stabilization agreement that's been negotiated with the city, that this project will be financially viable. So we must undertake further dialogue to that effect. But most importantly, and Mr. Chairman, my final observation, Mr. Fane, there are many things that you've done well. You've been responsive, you've evolved this design, you've created a very credible case for advancing to the next level. More than anything though, your determination, your passionate pursuit of this project demonstrates that even though there are more challenges that lie ahead, more scrutiny that will be required, you're prepared to blast through it and to propel this project forward. That is an essential characteristic for a developer of a project of this scale, so I commend you, and therefore you have my support for this action this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I don't want to be redundant to the excellent comments that have already been made. I would maybe just summarize my own views by saying it is the Commission's primary major objective to stimulate economic development. This project in and of itself as proposed, at over $200 million of investment, is significant, but it can also properly designed and executed be a catalyst, I think, for other development in the area and in the city. And when you look up north at the Seaport District in Boston or Hudson Yards in New York or many other places around the country, it's got to start somewhere to create the activity. I'm completely comfortable with the residential use. I think the site, Parcel 42, I felt that it wasn't properly configured in that frontage all along Dyer Street, that it actually should be broken up north and south. There's two sites, at least one of which should be residential, so I have no problem with that. I would agree with everyone that there's still a lot of work to be done. I have concerns about height. I have concerns about scale and massing. I have concerns about design, but I think we're going to be in good hands with the Fane Organization and with the City Planning Department and with the Commission's ability to ultimately sign off on all of this ourselves. I really want to thank the Fane Organization and its architect and Util and Bob Davis and our staff and Secretary Pryor for an awful lot of work on the site plan, which is absolutely critical because the original proposal just was not going to work. And there's been an awful lot of dialogue that has come up with where we are today. And I'm sure there will be further fine-tuning and improvement in that over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. So I think there's a lot of further work that has to be done. It'll be a major financial undertaking for the Fane Organization, which I am sure Mr. Fane and his firm are up to. So I'm in favor of taking it to the next step, recognizing that there's an awful lot of design work and serious commentary and discussion that is going to be necessary when it comes to the size of the property and how it's actually designed and how it's ultimately financed. Robert?
Thank you, Joe. First of all, I'd just like to say as a general observation, I spent most of my career at meetings like this, and the comments that have been made, the thoughtfulness with which they've been made has been truly impressive. And it's something, to me, as sort of a new Rhode Islander, makes me very proud. So I thank you all for that. Joe mentioned that Peter and I, good friends of Commerce, undertook the task of trying to develop a site layout that made the most sense possible given the objectives. We certainly had a vigorous exchange of views from time to time as to what that might be. But I do believe with it, the question is how do we proceed and still protect the interests of the Commission in the design of the project and, most importantly, its viability. And so the thought that I began to develop with the help of others is that indeed we give a conditional level 2 approval, but if you will, retain the right to approve the design of the project, to approve its financial structure, and to impose conditions on closing that will assure all of us that indeed what is proposed is in fact built in a timely fashion. So I've prepared a motion for everyone's consideration and circulating copies of it. I believe it would, we do not need to read all of it aloud, since it goes on for some 3 pages. A lot of the first page and a half is background. A lot of that's been talked about tonight, and how we solve the conundrum of finishing a design of a building before you know what the zone is. So I think everybody is of the mind that we need to proceed and test the zoning waters in order to determine what building will be built here. And so the motion that's before you purports to achieve those goals. So, Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we waive the reading aloud of all the whereas clauses, and then I think it would be useful if I specifically read the proposed resolutions and the conditions that apply. So, and I'll offer as I go along a little editorial comment, so if you could indulge me that would be great. So if we could, Mr. Chairman, if we could just have that action and that procedural motion, that would be helpful.
May I have a motion? Second?
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Thank you. In the preamble, which we just waived the reading of, the Commission would retain the absolute discretion if and when the applicant secures the necessary amendment to the zoning ordinance to review and approve the design of the project and determine the conditions on which the site of the project might be made available to the applicant. So I give you that background in terms of how this vote reads. Voted that the Commission issue to the Fane Organization, subject to and contingent upon the conditions here and below set forth, a conditional and preliminary level 2 approval for the project consisting of a single residential tower, street level retail and restaurants, and a uniform ground floor elevation except the Commission on that portion of the Commission's land designated in Exhibit A as no, that's actually I'll give you the language to correct the votes afterwards. As the portion of the Commission's land, it's actually the land designated on slide 3 of Mr. Fane's presentation as the proposed building perimeter, and that consists of the 6-story podium and the proposed 46-story tower. No rights to proceed with the project shall be treated as vested under this level 2 approval on the conditions of A and B. Those are the 2 that I just enumerated before I began to read the resolution, as well as any other conditions imposed under the level 2 approval are met to the satisfaction of the Commission. Here are the specific conditions. Number 1, subject to the adoption of the amendment by the Council, and the amendment referred to in the preamble as the zoning change that we've talked about this evening, by the Council permitting the project to proceed as proposed in accordance with the Providence zoning ordinance, the applicant will submit in form and substance satisfactory to the Commission all of the information required under the toolkit for a level 2 submittal. If requested by the Commission, the applicant shall include in the level 2 information such additional plans, studies, and other information as the Commission shall determine is necessary to conduct its assessment as to whether these conditions shall have been satisfactory. Subject to the foregoing and without prejudice to the Commission's right to request additional information, the Commission expressly finds the applicant must submit the level 2 data that is not being provided to date, but which is specifically identified as Exhibit A, Exhibit B attached to 2. Condition number 2. Following its receipt and review of the level 2 data, the Commission retains the right in sole discretion and without consent of the applicant to amend this resolution to include as part of this level 2 approval further conditions and requirements appropriate to protect the public interest in the development of the I-195 district. Condition 3, the improvements comprising the tower and the six-story podium components of the project shall be constructed and maintained in the area marked as, and here we have changed correct, proposed building perimeter, six-story podium, and proposed tower on Exhibit A. The applicant has also proposed an additional one-story retail component along the southwest wall of the podium adjacent to Dyer Street. This concept is new to the Commission, and the Commission has not yet made a determination of the appropriateness of the structure for its use. And because it's not yet been vetted, it's not part of this proposal. 4, the height of the tower shall be no less than 30 stories, no more than 46. That provision is added simply because we don't want a low-rise building with a massive roof. So that's an effort to provide some safeguards in that issue. Number 5, the Commission and the City of Providence, acting through the Downtown Design Review Committee process, shall approve the design of the project, including its architecture, building materials, and landscaping and hardscape. Number 6, the applicant's construction schedule for the sequencing of the construction of the project provides for the tower to be available for occupancy concurrently with the podium. And once approved by the Commission, compliance with such construction schedule shall be a condition of the level 2 approval for the project. The construction schedule must also conform to the project commencement and completion date standards of the I-195 Development Act of 2011. Condition 7, the Commission shall be satisfied with the terms and conditions of which the applicant is willing to require from the Commission the site of the project and its valuation. Number 8, the applicant shall demonstrate the Commission's satisfaction with financial resources by way of equity, debt, or otherwise necessary to construct and place the project in service are available to the applicant. Determining whether this condition shall have been met, the standards set forth in Condition 2 of the Level 1 approval shall be applicable. Number 9, if within 12 months of the date of the adoption of this resolution, the amendment is not fully adopted by the Council or by any of or B, if any of the foregoing conditions shall not have been fulfilled to the satisfaction of the Commission, this conditional Level 2 approval shall be null and void. Condition number 10, the amendment, if adopted by the Council, will not be effective until consented to by the Commission pursuant to Section 42-64 -14-5B of the I-195 Development Act. So that is, we have 2 resolutions here. That's the first vote. And so I offer that, Mr. Chairman, and ask you to solicit a second.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Becky. Is there any discussion from the Commissioner?
Yeah, I have just a question. So this proposal is unusual in the sense that it has requirements of 2 outside bodies, and that's sort of part of the rationale for having caveats. And then we seem to have a lot of other additional caveats beyond those that, and maybe you can walk through sort of why those are explicit.
Sure.
We sort of have our absolute right to do these things anyway.
Sure. Well, I will go back to number 1. And number 1 basically is we want to be sure they will ultimately get all of the level 2 base that we're entitled to under the provisions. So we're just enumerating that. So that's essentially what number 1 is about. And we thought it would be useful to actually attach a document that lists those items so there's no confusion.
For the avoidance of doubt.
Yes. Number 2 is a retention on our right to impose further conditions and requirements after we see this data. Because in fact, there may be information in it which we were not aware of and need to take into account. And so by granting this approval, which is Typically, this project would not be right for a level 2 approval at this point, but because of the absence of zoning, we find ourselves in this incredible conundrum. We can't really advance on a level 2. We can't ask Mr. Fane to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on design before he knows what indeed he can build. So that's what our conundrum is. And so we need to retain the flexibility to impose further conditions if the information we receive merits that. Number 3 makes clear where the building site is to be. We have pointed out here the introduction of the retail component along Dyer Street. In some respects, first blush, it looks like it has a lot of potentially good things in terms of activating the streetscape as a way to kind of buffer the facade of the podium. But we really haven't seen anything yet, other than a single dimension drawing, if you will, on the board. So we're simply saying here, we need more information, we need to vet it. Obviously, the city's going to be very concerned about that, how that works. And obviously, those interested in the park are going to be very interested in that. So we're just noting that, if you will, for the record. Number 4, which was a limitation on how high it could be, also has a floor, so that we don't end up with a 20-story building with a 6-story podium. I don't think that's what any of us are that interested in. So that's just a protective measure. Number 5 is maybe stating the obvious, but to confirm that we're going to be, our final action is going to be dependent on the Downtown Design Review Committee having undertaken its review process and having come to a favorable conclusion.
Sorry to jump in. I mean, so a lot. I guess my question is, a lot of these are things that the commission sort of by right has discretion over, right? But we're enumerating them, and I'm just making sure that is that do you agree with that being there?
Well, I think it's Joe used the phrase a minute ago to not be in a position, or to be in a position where there's an avoidance of doubt. There's no avoidance of doubt. There is avoidance of doubt. And so we just want to be very clear, because the legal rights flow from this document, and we just want to make sure that there's no confusion about what they are. So on this one, Barrett, I might ask you to indulge my 42 years of being a lawyer. So that's why we specifically reiterate. It also, I think, provides somewhat of a handy checklist for us going forward. We did the same exercise in the level 1 approval, and the guidelines we established turned out to be very, very helpful as we work through the footprint.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe a question on the side. It seemed the point you made about you can't ask Mr. Fane to spend additional funds in design. Does that suggest, maybe a separate meeting to talk about this, but that our requirements, level 1 and 2, may not be appropriate, either they be too exorbitant, or is it just because of the magnitude of this project that we find ourselves in this situation where we seem to have to cut some corners around the requirements?
That's an excellent question. I think the answer is that this is a unique situation. Virtually every project that comes before us conforms to the city's zoning ordinance. So there's no need to go for the applicant to go get zoning amendments. And because that amendment process is discretionary, one never knows how it's going to turn out. And given that uncertainty, it really would be somewhat a waste of Mr. Fane's resources, a waste of our time and our resources to be evaluating on a preliminary basis a really detailed and sophisticated design. Now, I don't mean wanting to tread on the city's toes. They're entitled to do what they want. But I think just from our standpoint, that's a fair situation. And similarly, we can't really agree on the terms of a transactional price yet because we don't know what indeed he's going to be able to build. And we really owe it to the residents of Rhode Island to withhold making that decision until, if you will, all the aspects of the development are on the table. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's what it is. So I don't think we need to change that. It's just this is a unique situation.
Barrett, has that answered your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Secretary Pryor.
I just want to elaborate upon the points made regarding item 3, which pertains to the retail along the southeast wall of the podium adjacent to Dyer Street. I believe that the notion of activating the development at street level is a good one. It's very important. Bob has already said this, but I just want to underscore, I support the language here because I believe that the commission hasn't had all that much time to digest the inclusion of retail along Dyer Street as described. But again, the objective is a good one, and from my point of view, we would welcome further dialogue about how this can be accomplished.
Thank you very much. Is there other comment or questions before we move the motion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 5-1. The ayes have it.
We have one more housekeeping matter. We have a second vote. So that indeed Mr. Fane can proceed to seek the zoning amendment. We as a commission will either need to enter into some type of document which authorizes him to pursue it because it's our land, or alternatively, and we talked about this in the level 1 approval, serve as the applicant on the request for the amendment ourselves. So I asked Chip to prepare a resolution that would authorize Joe and Peter, as respectively the chairman and executive director, to carry out those tasks. So let me read, this is relatively brief, I'll read it. Voted that each of the chairman and executive director acting individually be and he hereby is authorized to enter such agreements on behalf of the district as may be necessary or appropriate to enable the applicant in petition the city of Providence to adopt an amendment to the Providence zoning ordinance to permit development project and provide any subject to the conditions contained in the corporate vote, or if in the judgment of such individuals it is appropriate that the district petition for such amendment may be and he hereby authorized to do so. So that's the second motion.
Are you moving that, Bob?
I am moving that.
Is there a second? Sandra seconds it. Is there other questions or commentary? Secretary Pryor?
Question, Chairman, thank you, to the Vice Chairman. Do we need to discuss, or is it unnecessary, the petition of the General Assembly for the purpose of amendment when that arises, or is that something we can take up at a subsequent point in time?
I would suggest that we take it up at the subsequent point in time because we have no idea what the leadership of the General Assembly might want that request to look like, or on what basis it would want it to be issued.
But would it be your view, and I put this out to the Commission as a whole, but to the Vice Chairman, would it be your view, we'll likely start the dialogue around that at some point in time as this project progresses through the city procedures?
Yes,
And we'll begin dialogue with the General Assembly leadership as to their predisposition.
Chip, do you have a view as to procedurally how that would go?
I don't think we really looked into it at this point. So I suggest we proceed on the basis of the city zoning tonight. We look into it, and given this resolution and the discussion tonight, it's only logical to think that we need to address that and provide the appropriate authorization to do that as well in order to be consistent with what we've done tonight.
Works for me.
Are there other questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
5-1. Motion is carried. So,